start streaming now too. Greetings, Australia. Welcome to the Stand-Up Australia podcast. Stand-Up sits down with a contrarian conversation, rebutting the mainstream narrative. We're joined today again by Michael Calautti, who was with us about 2 months ago. How you going, Michael? And for anybody who doesn't know you, can you just give a little introduction again of yourself?
Look, I probably come to Stand Up Australia through Peter when he was travelling around, Peter Harris, when he was travelling around WA a year and a half or so ago, and joined the Australian Federation Party, stood as a candidate in the seat of Cowan, and have stayed closely connected with all things that brought Stand Up into our lives and what it stands for. And we remain involved in our political process.
Good. We need more good people like you across Australia.
We do. We need a lot of people to take a much bigger interest in their politics and what it means.
So what's been the news for you? Getting involved in anything at the moment?
The most recent touch in politics, I went and watched Pauline Hanson speak in Perth last Monday. She was here, so I thought I should take the opportunity to go and actually listen to what Pauline's got to say on this topic, or on any topic. And because, I've never really had much of an interest in One Nation for reasons that come to me through second or third party conversation. So I thought, in line with all of what I've learned in the last probably 3 years, probably guess best to go and get it all straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And in having a quick chat to a couple of people asked me, and I said, you know what, she's not what the media portrays her as at all.
No, she's not at all. I've seen her a couple of times now down here, up here, should I say? And it's always impressive. Same with Senator Roberts. You know, they speak from the heart. And I know a lot of it's politics as well, but I've always been impressed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you can't help it. You know, the woman's been around for a long time in that pressure cooker.
Yes.
And she's still here standing on what she believes in.
Yep, been to jail for it too.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get started onto our first story then. Now, I'm going to have to share my screen because I still haven't figured out how to get this to work natively, but I'll just check that on now. Okay, so
switching off the gas and trying to convince Victorians to cook with electricity.
And that sizzle is obviously a nice indicator of how hot it is.
From next year, new homes and residential subdivisions, as well as new government buildings, will be banned from using gas. It's being pitched as a saving for households.
This announcement will deliver real cost of living relief for Victorians.
Gas for so many years has been our friend. It's been plentiful and cheap. It's no longer plentiful, it's no longer cheap, and it's also a fossil fuel. We have to go in this direction, and this is the right step forward.
Victoria uses the most gas of any state, with more than 2 million homes and businesses connected. Gas accounts for 17% of the state's greenhouse gas emissions. The government is hoping to wean Victorians off gas as it aims towards net zero emissions by 2045.
The reality is this is a journey. It will take time.
The next step is going to be creating the right environment for people to move off gas when their old gas appliance gives up.
Consumer groups, environmentalists and the health sector have hailed the policy as a win for the climate and household budgets.
Is all electric cheaper than gas? Look, in the long run, yes, it should be. Up front, there may be some higher expenses.
Government now needs to step up and assist households to shift to the energy source of the future.
But there are warnings it could place greater pressure on the grid as more homes rely on electricity.
I expect there's going to be impacts across our industry of 3,000 to 4,000 jobs being removed.
If it looks like rush policy, if it looks like it's not thought through, chances are it probably is.
For Victorians that already have gas, the government wants you to turn off, and they want you to do it for good. And it's offering rebates to do so. It also wants you to switch off from its problems over the Commonwealth Games and an IBAC report that lifted the lid on a cash for access culture. In response to the corruption report, the government will claw back planning powers from council. but that is being resisted by some councils who say it's undemocratic.
The IBAC report clearly identified some pretty bad behaviour at a local council level.
The government is using IBAC to help move the focus to fixing the housing sector. Richard Willingham, ABC News, Melbourne.
All right, so this is obviously to do with the new gas laws that have just come in Victoria. So Victoria announces to ban gas connections to new homes from January 2024. Now, I know you're in the industry, so I really wanted to get your take on this.
What is 5G? You've probably heard it means faster internet, and maybe you've seen the 5G symbol on your phone somewhere.
And perhaps you've even heard about studies looking into whether 5G affects human health. In this case, that explores.
Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, it was interesting sort of having a conversation with a couple of people about this. Yeah, obviously, I'm in Western Australia. We have a very, well, and we could have a story next week similar to Victoria, but at the moment, gas is pretty much the king here. Now, most households that I know will have gas hot water heating. You'll have gas cooktops. The oven's going to be electric. And you'll have a couple of gas heaters, if not ducted gas heating throughout the house, or air conditioning is obviously electrical. So it's a massive call to be saying, if there's someone said here, 6 months out from it taking effect, and houses in WA are taking 18 months to 2 years to build, and you've made all those plans, you're not going to be able to get a gas connection. It's utterly insane. I just can't fathom how, and you sent me a link to Kyle and Jackie O talking about this. It is utter madness how a handful of people can get together and make a decision that just plunges everybody into chaos. It is mind-blowing. And we've seen over the last 3 years a handful of people making a decision that just creates chaos and massive amounts of expense for people with no proper thought put to it at all.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about this maybe coming along at a really great time for the government after the Commonwealth Games debacle? Is it a bit of a distraction here? Like it doesn't seem like it's very realistic to just come out and say this.
Politics, as I see it today, is all distraction. Behind the scenes of what's going on in your government is lots of pieces of legislation, and this one is one of them, that are meant to distract you from what's going on. But in this is one that affects pretty much everybody that's wanting to build a new dwelling, and it won't impact at all most of the people that make the decision and the people that are sitting in the government at the moment, whose houses are all no doubt heated with gas. They've got all their gas appliances, their gas hot water, which is very convenient and works very well. And now everyone else is stuck with their decision for who knows how long until somebody overturns it, if it ever gets overturned, on the basis that somehow it's good for CO2 emissions. And you don't have the electricity grid developed to the extent that it would need to be to take up the shortfall in the energy that you would need if you needed everyone to heat their hot water, heat their homes and everything with electrical energy.
Yeah, I guess they're relying on people to be using solar electricity, but I mean, if you've been to Victoria before, you understand the weather's really not that great, especially in times you'll need gas during the winter to heat your house. It gets bloody freezing there. Not only that, but like me and Peter talked about this last week, and I mean, I'm convinced it's going to push up rental prices too, because now they're going to have to build houses with new appliances. They're going to have to rip out the old ones, and what happens then? It just gets tacked onto your rent every week, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and you raise a good point there. You'll find dwellings that are you're going to build two classes of dwellings now as of January next year in Victoria. You'll have dwellings that have gas and dwellings that can't have gas. And consumers being consumers, your rental market, people say, I don't want a house if it's all electric, depending on the price of electricity and what it costs to heat your home with electricity compared to gas. So I think the last time we spoke, we talked about the price of utilities in Victoria, which are very different in Western Australia. We've got different policies here. So there's not a great disparity between using gas and using electricity here, but there would be in Victoria. And yeah, if you were looking to rent a house or buy a house, you'd be like, hang on, first thing I want to know is have I got gas or don't I have it?
Yeah. Every house I've been in that's been heated by gas is always a lot cheaper to heat your house than it is electricity.
Yeah.
In Victoria, where you've got it on 24/7 pretty much over winter. And it, there's the whole issue of where's the electricity coming from, right? It's coming from brown coal in Victoria. So they're not only getting rid of something that's probably a lot cleaner than that, like methane. Technically, it stays in the air less. It's more of a potent greenhouse gas apparently, but it does stay in the air for a lot less of the time. And now they're going to go to coal.
Yeah, that's the methane. Like, gas is methane. So, but if you're using that to generate the heat to create electricity, it's much less of a greenhouse emitter than coal is. That's been the whole story why gas has been developed over the last 30 years, I suppose. And Western Australia is the largest exporter of gas on the planet. And I can't see our government in Western Australia adopting the kind of policy they do in Victoria. And one of the people speaking in the video clip, he said that, it's, gas is more efficient and it's about supply. It's like, what? We have so much gas in this country that we ship it all over the world to people that don't have it.
Yeah.
In quantity greater than any other country on the planet.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it? It's just that whole, as long as it's not in our backyard, we'll be able to burn it everywhere else though. That's fine.
Yeah. But it is, again, this is a policy that smacks of being made in a very small room with a handful of people that doesn't take account of all of the other factors that they should be taking into account in making such a decision. To be in 6 months' time, that's it. You won't be able to connect gas to your house and you won't be able to buy a gas appliance, and too bad.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where this goes, but yeah, I mean, I think Kyle, as much as I don't really like the guy that much, I think he summed it up pretty well. I might just play a bit of this because it did find it quite funny. Where are we? All right, here is, you can see that.
Yep.
And some breaking news just through that you two are going to hate this. Victoria is reportedly going to today announce a statewide ban on all new gas connections to homes.
The woke Victorian government. How long do I have before I can get this through, the whole gas thing?
I don't know. It's surprising to me that this is happening at this rate.
It's crazy.
But it's so.
What
if you own? What about the companies that sell gas and sell gas cookers?
Yes.
What happens to them?
We're running ads about gas at the moment. So, I mean, the gas industry is obviously very, worried about all this because it's effectively saying it's over. But, I mean, it's not just about climate change. They reckon that the gas, if you use a gas cooker in the kitchen, it can cause like breathing problems for children and stuff like that.
We're not bloody idiots. I'm sick and tired of everyone thinking we're idiots. We can't hold our phone while we're driving, but we can eat a hamburger and smoke cigarettes. These laws are for idiots.
I know.
Yeah. That government sucks ass. That wandering-eyed flop down there can't have the Commonwealth Games because he can't budget. Now he thinks, I'll get all the woke losers to vote for me by getting rid of the gas. You're a flop.
I just, no one would really like this, surely.
No.
I do. It's just, he nails it on the head there. It's just, they're treating us like idiots, aren't they?
Well, they've been doing that for a long time and they've been getting away with it. It's really up to us to stop letting them treat us like idiots. What do you do when people like Dan Andrews get voted back into power? It is so true. We have the government we deserve.
Yes, we certainly do. We certainly do. And this government right now as well, I'm not sure if you've been following this story, but we have Craig Kelly who's just won his case. Well, he's had it dismissed by the federal court against the Australian Electoral Commission. Always have trouble saying that. So the Electoral Commission argued authorisation line on former Hughes MP's advertising was too small, but judge found it was reasonably prominent in broad daylight. So this government, this was clearly a tactic to smear his campaign at the start. There was nothing wrong with these posters going out. They found the text size was perfectly fine. And for me anyway, this is clear abuse of the system, election interference, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah. When we were with the party, we were registering everybody and getting everything ready for the election back 18 months ago, now, a bit over a year ago. It was the AEC people we dealt with were great at an individual level, and they were very helpful. But the process itself, and things like what Craig has had to go through here, when a charge is brought, he's got to defend it. He's got to get lawyers involved. He's got to take up his time, got to spend his energy, got to deal with the prospect of maybe he gets found guilty if the judge disagrees with his perspective on it. It's all, as you say, it's interference. It's got nothing to do with running a fair election. I think when I read that story, it said that the judge in the case had said the font is perfectly fine to be read from the distance that anyone would want to read it from. And I guess the intent of having that notification on electoral materials is that so people can be satisfied that it has been authorised by the party and that the party endorses that perspective. Now, if you're so interested to know that, you would get yourself up close enough to the poster, have a read, yep, it's been authorised by the party, or no, it has not. So for anybody to bring a charge that then requires Craig to go through all of what he's had to go through is, as you say, it's purely antagonistic, it's belligerency to just create interference in his running a campaign to offer the Australian people an alternative representation in their parliament. That's what most of the AEC, I pause to blame the AEC. They're supposedly an impartial agency, but like so many government agencies, they are politicised to a degree at the higher levels. And it's a function of both of our parties over the last generation or so to make it more and more difficult for independents and small parties to do what they are meant to do under our Constitution, offer every Australian the representation that they want in the Parliament. Our electoral laws are not there for those parties to mess around with, to cement their position and make opposition to them difficult. And that's what they do.
Yeah, they do it without any recourse, do they? They do it time and time again. He was speaking so much truth during that campaign. He's constantly been calling out the COVID-19 madness, the use of hydroxychloroquine. I believe his we can call him his boss, but the founder of the UAP, Palmer, ended up buying something like 1 million tablets to give out to Australians. So it's really upsetting to see. And yeah, I mean, I've got some more on that later down the track about in a few tabs away, just about what he's like, all the lies that have come out to be true and started to get printed in the newspapers, as you've seen. We were speaking earlier about it. So all these things that he's been slandered for, the text size of this and every other thing he said about COVID has been right. And if he had been let to speak and not slandered as much as he was, then we might be staring down a pretty different Australia at the moment.
Yeah, it's the manipulation of the political process through these rules and regulations that are meant, the whole purpose of those regulations is to make sure that elections are run fairly, openly and honestly. That's it. That's the whole purpose of regulations in the AEC.
Yep.
It's an agency that's there to do that function so that people have confidence in the electoral process. And something I learned years ago at law school was that laws are generally of a character called a sword or a shield, so which is perhaps self-explanatory. Laws that can be a shield for people, but often they'll be used as a sword by people with ill intent. And this is what's happened to Craig. That law that is there as a shield against dishonesty and, putting out information that's not authorised has been used as a sword against him, and that's not the intent of that law at all.
Yep. And, put that down with the censorship he's had on Twitter and Facebook and everything. So he's apparently got the second most followers on social media, I think. Right out there with Scott Morrison for some reason. I'm not sure why he's got the most, but
I'd rather follow Craig.
Yeah. Yeah, so would I. He had plenty to say about it as well. So I might just play that because rightly so, he sounds pretty annoyed.
An absolute disgrace that the AEC took this case to court to start with. They have wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money on a completely frivolous case, arguing over a font size. And at the end of the day, the federal court judge, a 3-day hearing, because this is just complete waste of taxpayers' money. And you have to ask, why did the AEC do this? I was one of the few people in the federal parliament that criticised the AEC for their vaccine mandates. This was a frivolous and malicious prosecution by the AEC. The head of the AEC, Tom Rogers, either today should resign or he should be sacking someone over this, because hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money has been wasted.
Do you feel somewhat vindicated by this result?
It's not a matter of being vindicated. The law itself, or the regulations itself that the AEC had written down, was so vague, so open to interpretation. Of what distance does a sign, are you meant to read the authorisation on a sign from? The questions like how long is a piece of string? There was an industry practice that had been done by all politicians. If they had found me guilty, they would have had to find every single person that put a sign out at that last election guilty. They took me together basically as a scapegoat. It was a witch hunt, and the AEC have been caught out today. Well, the loser today is the Australian taxpayer, because they're going to be up for hundreds of thousands of dollars of costs in this case that was completely unnecessary. As I said, it was a vindictive, malicious and vexatious prosecution by the AEC, and someone at the AEC has to be held responsible for this.
Yep, and that's
yeah,
it is the taxpayer that's
I couldn't agree more.
Suffer.
It hits, the nail he hits on the head there is accountability. And through all of these agencies and all the stuff that's going on in the world today, there's never anyone held accountable.
Yeah.
Nobody pays a price for making such appalling decisions that cost the taxpayer or impact on other people's lives. And and while that continues, there's no impediment to people making such decisions.
Yeah, no, there's not at all. And we really need to start standing up, and it's every week we go through the same stuff, just wasting taxpayers' money for no good reason. Another Commonwealth Games, that's going to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars in wasted taxpayer money. Not mentioning the wages, apparently they're going to be paid out to the people who were put in charge of the Commonwealth Games are still going to get paid those things. So,
no, their contracts will be rock solid. They'll get paid out.
It's just one thing after the next. I'm surprised we've got any money left, to be honest.
Just keep printing it.
Yep. I wanted to jump over to your side of Australia now. So this is a story that I've had on the back burner for a couple of weeks. We have discussed it about 3 weeks ago, the first case that happened. Now it's happened again. So I'll just jump to the story here. The Canning River tree planting halted after Aboriginal Corporation demanded $2.5 million. So 2 major tree planting events in Perth were reportedly cancelled this weekend. That was from the 17th of July after Aboriginal Corporation demanded $2.5 million.
Yeah.
So we have gone through this before about the Cultural Heritage Act, but being the man on the ground, I wanted to get your opinion on what the hell is going on over there.
When I first saw that story, I had to laugh. It's just like, wow. We've had this Cultural Heritage Act at that time for 17 days, and here we are in the chaos of it. And I stand to be corrected on this, but my understanding of Aboriginal heritage is that very little of this is written down. It is open to wide interpretation by whichever individual. I can't remember the phrase. There's a phrase used in that article when I read it, of the local knowledge holder. Who is the local knowledge holder? What is the value of that local knowledge, and where is it written down in any capacity for anybody to challenge it once they've made a determination that, according to his or her local knowledge, you can or can't undertake an activity on property that you own. That's the reality now for Western Australians. And in this case, as I understand it, this was a tree planting by local councils. And somebody stuck their hand up and said, no, we want $2.5 million to approve that. And it was so stunning in how revealing that demand was to illustrate what the voice is going to do. If that is ever passed into our constitution, it will create chaos on a scale we can barely imagine. But there's a term in there called the LHACS, or LACS, I guess it will end up being called, or LHACHS, which is a local cultural Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Service. And I assume that these will be geographical in nature. None of them have been set up yet, but you need an approval from a local Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Service to undertake any of the prescribed activities as they are in the Act. So again, this legislation is passed, enacted, with none of the bureaucracy that is meant to make it work in place. And you have builders now turning around and saying, well, I can't make a decision to build on your land or put your pool in or, construct that fence because you need to now provide me with certification, or the builder's going to get in trouble if he does the work. And there's no service set up. There's no clear guidelines on who is impacted or how. It's any property, I believe, over 1,100 square metres. And I don't know about Victoria, but in Western Australia, even within our metropolitan area, you've got significant amounts of that land that people have got, 11 or 1,200 square metre blocks, even 2 or 3 hectares within our metropolitan area. There's a lot of it. And then you go out into, little country areas where people can have, 20 or 30 acres that they live on. And they now are required to, if they disturb the soil by, I think it's 500 millimetres in depth, or they can't remove topsoil. There's so many bizarre rules in there. And what does it achieve in the long run? It's just chaos.
Is there any talk about overturning it?
Yeah, the Liberal Party in Western Australia, who is all but non-existent now, I think, I'm off the top of my head, I think they got 2 or 4 seats in our parliament. It's barely in opposition anymore. Have said that they will modify it, but of course that requires them to get elected, and that's highly unlikely at the next election. And talk before about the distraction that is government. Now, I don't know that anybody in West Australia had any awareness of this legislation going through our parliament until it was enacted and thrown out there by Mark McGowan as he walked out the door off into who knows where at the moment. But no doubt he's got some cushy job somewhere. He's enacted this piece of legislation, which is causing chaos for every ordinary person that has land, and now finds themselves having to get somebody to sign it off before they can do what they want to do on their own land.
Yeah, it's just madness. I've got what you were talking about here with. Where are we?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is The Voice in Western Australia, and this, because of the heritage laws, this is what it's saying now. So we've got undecided, 13%. This is, well, I should say what the question says. How will you vote in the upcoming Voice referendum? And it says here, how has the new Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act affected your vote for The Voice? And 54% of people have said it's made them less likely to vote yes. So, this is just it's a little window into what's going to happen on a grander scale, obviously. And just so you are going on about the little support the Liberal Party has over there, this is a little video about the election for Mark McGowan's old seat.
Results, it's pretty clear what the result is. 6 News projecting with just 5.83% of the vote counted, Labor will retain the WA seat of Rockingham in that by-election. That, of course, is Mark McGowan's old seat. Looking at the primary vote, Labor 48.75, Liberals 14.92, Independent Hayley Edwards 14.34, Legalised Cannabis 10.02, Greens 6.81, Australian Christians 2.57, the West Australian Party 0.96, and then you've got 2 independents rounding that out. So a swing of more than 30% away from Labor on primary vote, but they will retain it. They're just, with those results coming in, a bit shy of 50% on first preferences alone. But of course, let's not forget they had 82% of the primary in the 2021 state election in Rockingham and 87.7% on two-party preferred. We don't have a two-party preferred count yet. It might look something along the lines of 60-40 or so, but Labor easily retaining this seat, and they will keep that seat in the Western Australian lower house, where their majority is, of course, huge. The Liberals only have 2 seats there, the Nationals just 4.
So that's the state of politics in Western Australia. You've got 48% voting Labor, so they're still, basically walking into the government there.
Yeah, but it was a 30% swing against Labor, which is what I picked up there. But we have to remember that the last election was very unusual, in the middle of COVID, and taken at a time before mandates came in, also at a time when people were confused about what was going on and saw what Mark McGowan had done in closing the borders here as a positive step. And, he was a bit of a local hero for a time, and a very unusual election. So, 30% swing against Labor is a good sign. It's a very good sign. But I don't know how the Liberals, what have we got? 2.5 years to the next election, or 2 years? Well, it's less than 2 years. So whether or not the Liberals can make an impact at that election is doubtful. Doubtful.
Well, they're going to have to. I took note of something Gerard Rennick said last week when they said, "Are you going to run as an independent?" And he goes, he won't do it, because he says you're not going to change anything being independent. He says the only way to do it is to be one part of one of the major parties. I think it's I remember Peter was in touch with Gerard Rennick prior to the last election, and a few other of the figures that are sort of making a name for themselves at the moment and speaking out against everything. And look, I've got to disagree. Gerard will do what Gerard wants to do, but I do believe that those voices, he's established a voice, he has a profile, he kind of owes it to his principles to stand as an independent and give people that opportunity. And because he's one of the rare independents or potential independents in the country who could get elected in his own right, and if there were enough of them, then they can form their own coalition. They can then form a party if they wanted to. They can do a lot of things from that position. So I haven't seen his comments on that issue, but from what you're saying now, I'd have to disagree with him. Yeah, well, let's hope he he does stick around. I mean, he's still got a year to go before he leaves, but yeah.
He could do a lot in that year.
He certainly can. He can burn the whole place down, I think, in that year. So,
yeah.
Let's hope he does.
Yeah, got nothing to lose now. I did think that when I heard that he'd lost his endorsement, I thought, well, he's a pretty outspoken guy. Doesn't seem to pull his punches, but now he can swing from the fences. He's got no reason to give a damn about what the Liberal Party think of him. They've made their intentions clear. So go out swinging, Jared.
Yeah, I think the only good part about that was he only lost marginally, which means obviously up to 50% of the party believes in what he says and is backing him, which is quite good. I was expecting that whole thing to be quite a bit of a walkover, but there's at least half of the Liberal Party is sane, but I'd rather see another independent party come up through the ranks and replace these archaic parties we've got right now, because it's just I just don't believe we're going to get anywhere. I'd like to believe what he says about the Liberal Party and the Labor Party being the only way, but I do agree with you. I think it's just a longer road.
Yeah, and I think that was a position of Alex Antic at the time too. He didn't feel that he could achieve anything outside of that party structure. But what we talked about earlier with Mark McGowan winning by such a massive landslide at the last election due to the circumstances of people's perceptions and beliefs about his decisions at that time, and now is what is playing out. If you caught the front page of the Weekend Australian, where it's what many of us have known for a long time about COVID and its origins and its the ideas behind how to manage it were so wrong. Decisions taken by a handful of people have proven to be so wrong and so damaging to so many people. People lost businesses, livelihoods, the whole lot, their lives, their health, all kinds of things. So, long way to make a point, but where Jared is at today, with a vote taken in the party room to take away his endorsement, you wonder how much that might actually shift prior to the election, with more and more information coming out all the time about it's proving him right, proving that the stance he has taken has been absolutely correct.
Yep.
So, and as you say, with a close vote, a handful of people might be reconsidering their decision. I don't know if there's another opportunity for Jared's endorsement to be re-endorsed, if that's the right word, or reattached. That's potential too, because I think people are changing their mind every day, and I certainly don't think it's people that were on our side of the fence who are changing their mind.
Yeah, the articles you're talking about, these ones here. So COVID cover-up, how science was silenced. And then we've also got this one here, which I believe was in the same paper. The Weekend Australian. So ban COVID post totally factual. So this is what I was talking about earlier as far as the post being taken down off the UAP's Craig Kelly's Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. So the COVID-19 vaccine does not prevent infection or transmission, which we know is true. COVID-19 was released or escaped from the Wuhan laboratory. We don't know if that's true yet. We assume it is. The lockdowns are ineffective. COVID-19 is a 99.97% recovery rate. And then can you fill me in on this article and exactly what it says? Because I have not been able to read it.
That article, that I'm only reading it just before I came on, and there's a couple of articles in there, and you mentioned in there we're not sure that it came from the lab. Well, there's a couple of people quoted in that article saying we are sure.
Yeah.
And it's stunning because I'm one of the people, I've changed my position. I've been a follower of the media. Stupidly, I kind of believed to a degree what I read in the mainstream media. And from the very origins of COVID, through various people that sort of said, no, you need to look a bit deeper and read this and read that. And I was a bit skeptical at first. And then you go, wow, it's just so much propaganda and so much rubbish reported through these agencies. And you look behind it, you look at this bill that's supposedly going through our parliament at the moment to control information through Facebook, through Google, through all of these other places that are responsible for us using them as social media, and how they will block things that they don't like. And all of those posts now have been found to be absolutely factual. And yet they were taken down, or you get a ban for posting them. And that's happened to me and just about everybody I know putting stuff out there on social media. It's like, oh, you've got a ban. It's like, hang on, this came from a reputable source. How is it, and we know it to be a fact, how is it a problem to put that out in the public domain? And ultimately, somebody has an interest in having that information withheld or obscured, and that's what we saw. And there's, again, no accountability for it. I believe the Senate voted a couple of months ago against us having an inquiry in this country into all of the management of COVID. So again, the people that are put there to look after our interests, they don't want any scrutiny on them for having failed as miserably as they did. And what do we as the public do when we are entitled to have all of what happened reviewed? Because there is the potential that there are problems that anything could happen in the future. And then we rely on these government agencies to act reasonably and on our behalf. And they have proven so woefully inept that we should understand what went wrong and where it went wrong so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, they're just saving their own skin, though. They don't want to have those sorts of things. I mean, same with the excess deaths. They've voted that down too, to have a commission into that to find out what the hell's going on there. I saw an article the other day about Tasmania, and they've got like 17% still excess deaths in the last quarter. So that's insane. Like, something's got to come out, and it is coming out. It's trickling out slowly. My only concern is that because this is in the Australian, it's obviously noted to be a conservative rag. It is something you have to buy. You can't just read it online for free because it's all under. It's all got the paywalls in front of it. So I'm just hoping this gets out to people, because it's it really needs to. I know plenty of people that are questioning it now, and they need to be reading this stuff.
It is interesting. I mean, I think the Australian is a little bit better than a rag, but that's my opinion. I don't tend to read the newspaper these days, but it has been interesting watching the story break out in little ways. And as I say, for people like myself and yourself who are all across the whole thing and have been for a very long time, it's interesting to think what people who have been in denial or have been calling us cookers and anti-vaxxers for the last 18 months are making of seeing this on the front page of the newspaper, whether or not you're reading Fairfax or you're reading news. And what you say is true, because I know a handful of people that if I'd showed them that front page, that's what they'd say. Oh, that's just Murdoch's crap. That's all rubbish. But it's like, well, no, it's quoting people. And that's immediately what I did when I read the articles. Who's saying this? And I can't remember the guy's name now, but his position and where he's from is what it is. It's not, some obscure person from nowhere that the Australian has blown up to make a story out of it. No, this is a credible person in the agency that has access to, or the best access to the information, and this is what he's saying. So, but I'm sure, there's plenty of people out there who will just, they'll deny the sky's blue. What can you do?
Yeah. Well, look, this comes on the back of something else that's come out this week as well in the last couple of days. I've got a video to play, but I just wanted to show you this first.
Yeah.
So this is the paper that's been... Oops, I'm just getting rid of that. What have I done? Yeah. So the paper that's just come out in Switzerland, it's not a preprint, unlike the one That was previous by McCullough and all these guys. That was a preprint. It got taken down very, very quickly. This one is published. So this one is published by the Department of Cardiology and Cardiovascular Research Institute in Basel, Switzerland. And it's found that 1 in 35 people who got the booster, we're talking about the Moderna booster here, got myocarditis. Wow. And something like 20% of them had troponin levels which were elevated, which is a big sign that something's going on in your heart. So I've got John Campbell here. Not sure if you're familiar with John Campbell.
Yep.
So he does a little breakdown of it. He's been doing some great stuff. So if anybody hasn't read John Campbell, then listened to him or watched him, then I highly recommend you get onto his channel. But
it's Wednesday, the 26th of July. Now, if regulators around the world don't take notice of the information I'm about to give via this paper, then they are at best, in my view, negligent. At worst, they don't even want to think about it. After Moderna booster vaccines in a trial done in Switzerland, there were 777 working people followed up with 777 controls. 5.1% of those who had the booster vaccine had increased troponins, indicating cardiomyocyte damage. So 5.1% increased cardiac marker damage, chemicals in the blood. 2.8% of the 777, that is 1 in 35, had vaccine-associated myocardial injury. Quite astounding and incredible. That's what this is about. If you want to watch, stick around. I think I can get through it all in about but the main points in about 10 minutes if you want to stay. Because this is really quite an impressive study by cardiologists and scientists in Switzerland. Myocardial injury after COVID-19 vaccine. This is the Moderna mRNA 1273 booster. Department of Cardiology and Cardiovascular Research Institute of Basel in Switzerland, of course. Now, this is published in the European Journal of Heart Failure. It's an open access journal of the Heart Failure Association of the European Society of Cardiology, so top flight stuff. This paper is accepted. It is peer reviewed. It's not yet published. We've got a preprint, not a preprint, a pre-release copy, because it's not a preprint because it is peer reviewed, and a fully accepted paper in an international peer-reviewed reputable journal. It's a prospective active surveillance study. So they went forward, collected the data as they went on, and it's active surveillance. They were actually looking for things. In the past, what we've had is retrospective passive surveillance. So it's been passive in the past. People have only collected data as patients have come forward to complain about it. And it's been retrospective, looking back. This is a much better quality study all round, and has produced really quite worrying results, really. And this study was industry independent. It had nothing to do with the people that are making the money. Nothing to do with the people that are making the money. This study was not carried out by the people that are making the money. Independent. Instigated by the investigators themselves. So the aim, they want to look at the incidence and potential mechanism of oligosymptomatic. So oligo means few, oligosymptomatic.
Anyway, I'll leave that there. The rest of the video and the longer one, a link to a longer version of it is in the show notes. So, but it's quite troubling when you think 2.8 or 3%, if we round up, of all people who got the Moderna booster shot. And I mean, maybe it was the first 2 shots too that have done the same thing. We know that this is the case. The Moderna is been known to, I guess, damage the heart a lot more than the Pfizer, just because it's got a higher quantity of the spike protein in it. It's a more potent mix, but this is, you're talking 3%, and let's say the Pfizer vaccine was like 1.5%, because it was about half the Moderna vaccine. That's a hell of a lot of people. They could just drop dead at any time.
Vaccinate a few billion people, and 1 in 35 of them has damaged their heart. That's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Bronny James, who's LeBron James' son, went down with a cardiac arrest.
Yeah,
he's lucky to be alive. He's 18 years old, and that's because he was training at basketball, and that's who cops it the most.
I have my own 19-year-old who's having some problems at the moment. I don't know enough about him, and I certainly wouldn't make them public even if I did. But it's like in the back of my mind, it's like, he was, I don't know, I think he was probably 16 or 17 at the time, and he was working at a store, and they required him to be vaccinated to keep his job, and he wanted to keep his job. And as a parent, you tell your kids that they'll do what they want to do. And now he's got some issues, and I don't know whether they're related or not, but there's so much of it going around. Lots of it. So many people.
Well, that's really concerning. I really hope that he gets on top of those, because
and you just wonder about, when you see stories that breaking in the mainstream media, who played with a straight bat through all of that, like, look at these cookers and these anti-vaxxers and these crazy people that have got this problem with this safe and effective vaccine, and now what we knew is now front page on them. And so what's next? This is only the beginning of this story breaking out. That story on the Weekend Australian is really about the origins of COVID. It even questions and raises the question that COVID was man-made in that lab as part of military military weapons development, if you like, bioweapons development. And, when you said these things too, or when I heard these things 2 or 3 years ago, even I thought, it's a bit out there. That's a bit out there, mate, And now it turns out to be, that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. And I'm a person who only ever looks at the evidence. You come to me and you tell me that, the earth is flat. Well, mate, I want to see the evidence, That's it. There's not much of a conversation unless I see the evidence. So right back early in this, if I could find that evidence, you didn't have to look very hard. You didn't have to look very far to raise some questions in your mind about whether it was a good idea to let someone shoot that crap into your body. If you weren't willing to consider at that point whether or not that was a good idea, then how much concern do you have for your own well-being? It wasn't hard to find. And so what we'll see, what we'll see over the next year, I think and there's been a few articles before that, what we're going to see is more and more of what we've known for 2 to 3 years will just be put out there as, yep. And as if it's kind of like breaking news for the people who've had their head in the sand for so long. There's nothing breaking about this. This is pretty well established a long time ago.
Yep. Yeah, certainly is. This is what annoys me about information, is that, people will only listen to it once it hits a mainstream publication like the Australian. It's been well known. It's like, oh, now it's true because it's in the newspaper. It's like, no, it was always true. It's always true. It's the message. It's not the medium that should really matter.
And I think John Campbell, quite famously, he was pro all of this in the early days, and he's swapped sides, when I say sides, he's just followed the evidence. He had enough thrown at him to go, hang on, there's something not right about this.
Yeah.
And so since that time, he's now very staunch, and he's been very solid in exposing it.
Yeah, well, it's how science should be done, right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not that hard.
Yeah, well, let's hope that more and more as information gets out, and look, we really need it soon. We need it in the coming weeks, not the coming years, because the longer they get away with this, the more likelihood is there's going to be more mRNA vaccines, or modified RNA, we should really call it, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's zombie RNA that does not break down in your system and is doing incredible damage to people. And if this gets to the point where it's being put into vaccine after vaccine, then we're in a hell of a lot of trouble, you know.
Well, that's what you read, and there's one that I keep seeing, you know, get thrown out on social media. I had a friend who sort of did a bit of research into this. It's not true, and it's all the mRNA vaccines that are supposedly being developed for animals. So, I mean, for people that you know, carnivores or omnivores or whatever, are eating animal products that are coming through that farming method, then, you know, your KFC, you know, your chicken, whatever chicken you're eating, whatever you're eating, bacon, whatever you're going to be eating that's come from an animal, all of these animals are going to be injected with mRNA. Now, whether or not that transfers into you through that chain, I don't know. But we've kind of lost confidence in the people that would turn around and say to you, no, that won't be a problem, don't worry about it. You know, we don't believe people anymore because of the vested interests in it.
Yeah.
You know, and John Campbell said in that video, it's like, this research was not done by the people who make the money.
Yeah.
And it remains to be seen.
Yeah, look, I've seen the same thing with aspartame, the studies that have come out about that. There's something like 100 studies done by the manufacturers have all come back, said it's safe, and all the studies that are not done by the manufacturers all come back and say that it's unsafe. So follow the money. It's where the money comes from. And I was having this conversation with my children the other day. They were asking me about some scientific thing about I think it was about coffee, actually. And I'm in the coffee industry, and they said, "Oh, coffee's good for you, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, it's not bad for you, but like it's like anything. If you have too much of it, it can be bad for you." And I said, in the end, boys, the coffee industry paid someone to do a study on the coffee to say it was good. Yeah. And if they want to get that money and they want to get hired again, and they'll come up with a way to say that coffee's healthy for you. And you know, they looked at me like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting," you know. And that's it. That's the scientific industrial complex, isn't it? It's you can't trust anything you read that's not come from a third party source. Mm-hmm. If it's come directly from the horse's mouth, it's probably not true.
Yeah, coffee's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, because you would think through the process of coffee, if it's had Roundup sprayed all over it in its growth phase or other chemicals, the way that we consume coffee, it's going to be roasted, then it's going to be ground, and then it's going to be passed through boiling water. I can't imagine that anything untoward is going to pass through that other than, you know, caffeine and all the good stuff that makes it taste so great.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not, because I drink enough of it.
Yeah, well, I'm a reformed coffee addict. I'm down to maybe one a week from 6 or 7 a day, but I still enjoy it, always will.
Yeah, good on you.
But, you know, it's not the same for so many other things that people consume. You know, the food stuffs that we now consume, the way they're grown and the way they come to us, it's questionable how much of it is beneficial to our health. And a lot of people are questioning that. A lot of people.
Yep.
That's good. It's good.
Yep. Keep the questions coming, I'll say.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Michael, I'm going to have to end it there because I've got to go cook dinner for my children that I was just talking about. But yeah, it's been lovely having you on again. I'd love to have you back on next time you're back in town.
No worries. I would look forward to it.
Awesome, Michael. Cheers, mate.
Take care.